Well, welcome to the William A. VanNortwick Jr. presentation of the PINs. Thank you for attending today. My name is Steve Fahlgren. I'm a circuit judge right here in the 4th Judicial Circuit. I chair the 4th Judicial Circuit Pro Bono Committee. I believe that the late Judge Nortwick's wife, Maria Henderson, may be in attendance. I want to especially welcome her because this event is named in honor of her late husband. Our purpose today is to show appreciation for the hundreds of pro bono attorneys in the 4th Judicial Circuit and beyond. We'd normally be meeting in person, we'd have a lunch, hand out the pro bono service lapel pins provided by the Young Lawyers Division. It's our hope that we'll be able to do that again next year. I also want to introduce two individuals who lead our local legal aid organizations, Jacksonville Area Legal Aid and Three Rivers Legal Services. They work together to assess the needs of the community and collaborate on projects to expand services to those in need and also work closely with other service providers in the area. They are Jim Kowalski, President and CEO of Jacksonville Area Legal Aid, and Donna McCrae, Deputy Director of Three River Legal Services.
Hi, my name is Jim Kowalski, and I'm the President and CEO of Jacksonville Area Legal Aid. And I'm here to congratulate those pro bono lawyers who've given an extraordinary amount of time during this extraordinary year. Whenever I attend a pro bono ceremony, I think back to one that I attended years ago when I was a solo practitioner like many of you are. And the ceremony was in Tallahassee. I wasn't going to go. I didn't want to take time off from work. And the folks at JALA who nominated me called and said, "You really have to go." So we took the kids out of school and we drove to Tallahassee and attended the ceremony, and it was an amazing event. It was filled so much with gratitude. And at the end of the ceremony, I noticed a tall, distinguished gentleman motioning me over. So I go over and say hi, and he says, "I don't know if you remember me, but I remember you from an oral argument we had a few months ago, and I saw you were getting this award, and I wanted to come over and congratulate you." And that gesture by First District Court of Appeal Judge Bill VanNortwick had an enormous impact on my life. The fact that he would step out of his day to come into my day to congratulate me really knocked me off this comfortable road I was on, and ultimately I think led me to coming to JALA. And Bill did that for so many people. He had this way either of gently knocking you off your road, or more often just simply leading you onto his road, which was the right path, and frankly, if Bill was on it, the more fun path. And the second thing I think about when I think about that moment is how quintessential pro bono that was. Bill taking time out of his day to come into my day, just like all of you have taken time away from your days, from your firms, from your families, to step into another person's day and help change their life. And what an amazing thing it is that we as lawyers get to do that. So, on behalf of the board of Jacksonville Area Legal Aid and the staff, but most importantly, our clients and the community we serve, thank you.
On behalf of Three Rivers Legal Services, I want to thank each of you for volunteering to serve the legal needs of the low-income residents of the 4th Judicial Circuit. Without volunteers such as yourselves, hundreds of individuals and families would be left to maneuver the court system on their own. As a result of your service, victims of domestic violence and child abuse are now able to live in safety. Heirs property owners are now able to obtain needed repairs to their family homes. Victims of COVID now have agents who can make medical decisions for them when they themselves are unable to express their wishes. And tenants who are facing eviction and the threat of becoming homeless now have stable housing. These are just a few examples of the many ways that your services have impacted the low-income families of the 4th Circuit. Three Rivers Legal Services has been serving the needs of the low-income community for more than 40 years. We have a wide variety of pro bono opportunities available to volunteers, such as giving presentations to groups of veterans, participating in clinics at domestic violence and drug treatment centers, giving legal advice at Ask a Lawyer events, providing full representation in individual cases, and co-counseling with our staff attorneys on more complex cases. You can sign up by simply going to the Three Rivers Legal Services website. Any service you can provide to our clients will be greatly appreciated. And again, thank you for all that you are doing to improve the lives of our low-income clients.
Thank you, Jim and Donna, for your comments. I appreciate it very much. At the beginning of the program, the names of our pro bono attorney honorees were scrolling on the screen. I want to welcome our state and federal judges, guests from the legal community, and our keynote speakers today, Brian Gowdy and Thomas Hall. Please stay tuned because you're going to hear from them in a few minutes. This program would not be possible without the great support from Missy Davenport of Jacksonville Area Legal Aid and the Jacksonville Bar Association, led by its capable executive director, Craig Shoup, and its board president, Michael Orr. I want to thank the event sponsors for the previous years. They've continued to sponsor Ackerman, Edwards and Raggetts, Farah and Farah, Holland and Knight, Pagic and Pagic, and Spoer and Dodd. We know each of these organizations has a long history of supporting and participating in pro bono legal representation, and we are grateful for their involvement. Some of you attending may be wondering, well, how do I get recognized? My name's not scrolling on the screen, but I'd love to get involved. If you're interested in volunteering, please reach out to Missy Davenport at Jacksonville Area Legal Aid or Sarah Sullivan at Three Rivers Legal Services. They can give you more information. There is a place for you, whether you're in a solo practitioner law firm or a large law firm. Depending on the practice area, training can be offered, but a lot of people don't know you also have the opportunity to get legal malpractice coverage, legal research, and office space can even be used. But today, it's all about honoring our pro bono honorees, those who have already done the service. Maybe you've donated your hard-earned money to help those less fortunate. Maybe you've been part of a team that has run with Mike Freed when he runs the Freed to Run. Those are 6 marathons from Tallahassee to Jacksonville every fall. He'll be doing it this November 15th through November 20th. The last leg ends at the Duval County Courthouse. And for those of you who don't want to run the whole thing, you can just run part of it. And there's even a 5K that ends at the courthouse on November 20th. So you have that way of getting involved. It's amazing. Last year when he crossed the finish line, donations to date totaled over $1.4 million. And that's for the Northeast Florida Medical Legal Partnership Fund, and including generous matching funds from Baptist Health Foundation. Well, many of you give quietly of your time, talent, and treasure to help achieve justice for all. We appreciate that. You have increased access to justice in our community. You've spent hundreds of hours leveling the playing field, upholding what we believe to be the strength of our system of justice, and that zealous representation on both sides of an issue. You have fulfilled your oath that you gave when you became a member of the Florida Bar that said, quote, "I will never reject from any consideration personal to myself the cause of the defenseless or oppressed, or delay anyone's cause for lucre or malice, so help me God." you've attempted to fulfill your pledge when you do the Pledge of Allegiance. That pledges an allegiance to a republic that seeks justice for all. So we'd like to thank each of you personally. Can't do that, but thank you, thank you, thank you. Normally the members of the judiciary would also be here to personally shake your hands. I can tell you that after speaking with them, I've never heard anyone say but great things. From our perspective, it makes things a lot easier when there's good counsel on both sides. Well, I'm truly honored to introduce our keynote speakers, Brian Gowdy and Thomas Hall. They're going to discuss the history of Florida's interest on trust accounts program, that's IOTA, including recent updates. These are very talented lawyers who have a history of dedicating their time and talent to pro bono efforts. Most recently, Brian Gowdy presented oral argument to the Florida Supreme Court on behalf of 26 past presidents of the Florida Bar Foundation, who commented on a proposed rule amendment that would change how IOTA funds are distributed to legal aid organizations in Florida. 14 groups commented on and opposed the proposed rule. In addition to Mr. Gowdy, Thomas D. Hall of the prestigious The Mills firm presented an oral argument for the Florida Civil Legal Aid Association. They were essentially playing a song, "You're Gonna Miss Me When I'm Gone," suggesting some of the proposed changes were misguided and could be devastating to the provision of legal aid to the poor. They advocated with the hopes of reaching the goal of the United States of America with justice for all. And I'll let them comment on the IOTA trust account program and how well it went. But Brian and Thomas, thank you for your leadership and thank you for joining us today. It's an honor to have you with us.
Hello, I'm happy to be here with you today. I want to express my sincere gratitude to each of you who have given your time, resources, and legal expertise to serve Floridians in need. That so many of you serve others in this capacity is truly inspiring to me. I hope today, by telling you a story of Florida lawyers from a half-century ago, I can inspire each of you to continue to serve Floridians in need. Early in this pandemic, I recall watching my friend Michelle Barnett speak after she was sworn in as the president of the Jacksonville Bar Association. She talked about how lawyers are problem solvers. Indeed, we are. But of course, we don't have a monopoly on this skill. Farmers, for instance, also are problem solvers, and they have been for thousands of years. The Bible, in several verses, speaks about the farming practice known as the gleanings of the harvest. For example, in chapter 23, verse 22 of Leviticus, it says, "When you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not reap to the very edges of your field, or gather the gleanings of your harvest. You shall leave them for the poor and for the alien." In other words, gleanings were the crops left in a farmer's field after all the other crops, those that could be commercially harvested at a profit, had been collected. The gleanings became a legally enforced entitlement of the poor in both Hebrew and Christian societies. This was a creative solution that societies used for the problem of feeding the poor. 50 years ago, a group of Florida lawyers saw another problem that needed a solution: the need to fund legal services for impoverished Floridians. These lawyers devised a creative solution, much like their farming ancestors had with the gleanings of the harvest. What they devised we call today IOTA, or IOLTA, interest on lawyer trust accounts. This leftover interest, just like the leftover gleanings from farmers' fields, has been used for the last 50 years to fund in part legal services for those in need. A technical definition of IOTA would be a method of using the interest generated by pooled client funds in lawyers' trust accounts to raise money for law-related charitable purposes, primarily to fund civil legal aid for the poor. For a very long time, lawyers have had to hold a client's money in a separate trust account. Lawyers, though, generally do not open a separate account for each client. Instead, they pool all their clients' money into a single trust account. These accounts may hold thousands, if not millions of dollars. But before the 1970s, banks did not pay interest on these accounts. Why? Well, it would be impossible for a lawyer to allocate the interest among his or her various clients. It was just not economically feasible to do so. Just like it was not economically feasible for the farmer to gather and sell the gleanings. But this pre-1970s practice meant that clients were effectively making an interest-free loan to the banks, and those banks in turn would use the client's funds to make loans and profits. Then, in the early 1970s, a group of clever Florida lawyers saw a way to use these IOTA accounts to fund legal services for those in need. Borrowing an ideal from Canadian and Australian bars, the leaders of the Florida bar determined that banks should be required to pay interest on such accounts, and that any such interest should go to a foundation, the Florida Bar Foundation, that would then use the interest, or the gleanings, so to speak, to pay for legal services for Floridians in need. Over the years, new generations of bar leaders revised and updated this program to generate more gleanings for Floridians in need. First, the bar changed the program from voluntary to mandatory. Then, the bar required banks to pay on IOTA accounts the same higher interest rate it paid on other accounts. And most recently, the Florida Supreme Court has made changes to this program that Tom Hall will be speaking to you about. What these Florida lawyers devised 50 years ago was ingenious. Accounts that before the 1970s generated cost-free profits for banks were being used after the 1970s to fund legal services for Floridians in need. The other 49 state bars realized the brilliance of these Florida lawyers, who admittedly borrowed the ideal from their Canadian and Australian counterparts. By 1997, just 20 years after Florida had launched its IOTA program, all 50 states had similar IOTA or IOLTA programs to fund legal services for the impoverished. Let me be clear about something, though. Despite the ingenuity of the IOTA program, it was merely a solution to the problem of meeting the legal needs of Florida's underserved. It was not and never could be the solution, just as a farmer's gleanings cannot be the solution to feeding all the poor. IOTA funds by themselves never have been sufficient to fund legal services for those in need. And during the Great Recession, interest rates plunged, severely diminishing the available IOTA funds. Those rates have never returned to their pre-recession levels. Another solution for this problem that 48 other states, but not Florida, have adopted is government funding of legal services for those in need. I applaud those in power today who emphasize and are willing to pay for civics education. For our republic to work effectively, citizens must understand how the republic works. That same emphasis, however, needs to be applied to legal services for the impoverished. The words engraved in the Supreme Courthouse in Washington, "equal justice under law," cannot be fulfilled if justice is available only to those who can pay for it. To fulfill this lofty principle here in Florida, we cannot rely solely on IOTA funds, not solely on the gleanings of the harvest from a farmer's field. We also need our legislature to fund legal services for those most in need. Some legislators, like former Senator Bradley from our area, have had the foresight to understand this and work for increased legal aid funding. Hopefully more legislatures will come to appreciate, like he does, that funding legal services for those in need is just as critical to the welfare of our republic as is funding for civics education. Let me close by highlighting yet another solution, though not the solution, to meeting the legal needs of Floridians. What each of you do, pro bono service. While pro bono service alone cannot solve all the problems of Floridians in need, your service does help to nourish and keep alive our goal of someday achieving those words written on the courthouse in Washington: equal justice under law. Thank you, thank you, thank you for what each of you have done, and I hope you will continue to serve Floridians in need.
First, let me thank you for inviting me. It's really my pleasure and my honor to be able to speak to you about these very important awards that you're giving out today. As Brian said in his speech, thank you, thank you, thank you. We really appreciate all that you've done for the poor people in Florida. As when I was the clerk of court at the Florida Supreme Court, I attended a lot of ceremonies similar to this, lunches, dinners, etc. But my favorite one to attend every year was the annual statewide pro bono awards, where the Supreme Court itself recognized somebody from every circuit, and they gave out the Tobias Simon Award, the award for the most productive, best person in providing pro bono services for that year. Brian discussed a topic that we had briefed in the IOTA case, which I'm sure many of you have heard about at this time, called gleanings of the field. Gleaning out of fields, as he explained, is the leftover of the crops when they were harvested. And that's really over the past few years, for a long time, based on the IOTA program, that's really where lots of legal service agencies got their money, from those gleanings of the field. The reality, as we all know, is that wasn't much. It's, as Brian explained, it's the sort of leftovers that happen. It's really not enough to really provide the kind of legal services that ultimately the people only provide through volunteering and providing pro bono services. The other interesting part about gleanings is it has a separate definition, and that separate definition is that it's minimal gain with a lot of hard work. And that's really, in many ways, what happens with pro bono volunteer attorneys. They do a great job, they work hard, but in terms of influencing the entire system, it's really a small step, a necessary step, but it doesn't really solve the entire problem. We really know that what we really need to serve the poor is really enough attorneys to serve the entire need. We also know that's never going to happen. There's no federal funding anymore, or none of consequence. Florida does not provide any state tax dollars for that sort of funding. So the next best thing we need is volunteer attorneys. And ultimately we need volunteer attorneys so we can truly serve everyone. But we also know that's not going to happen either. So I would like to say that I would be here today to propose some sort of solution for you. But unfortunately, I don't have a real solution. I don't think there is a real solution going forward without that additional money that we need and that we know we're not going to get. The landscape in Florida for the court system is actually changing a lot. And although there's some bad aspects to that, there are at least things that I think are not going to work well or not working as well as they have been in the past. There also are some good things that are going to come out of that. The current Florida Supreme Court is actually very active, proactive in fact, in making changes to the court system to improve it as they think it needs to be improved. Now they're doing that in a very different way than they've done before. As I said, they're very proactive. In the past, for the most part, what they did was people brought proposed solutions to them. And now the court on its own is proposing solutions and adopting those solutions. There's a whole bunch of those. I think you're all aware of the IOTA case recently where they were going to rewrite the IOTA rule and really make some rather drastic changes as proposed by the task force. But there was a group of attorneys who got together and volunteered to represent the legal aid associations, the board of directors of the Florida Bar Foundation, the former presidents of the Florida Bar, and they opposed that rule change. And the difference, I think, on that was, in that case, the court really listened to us. It could have been a very bad rule, at least as those who opposed it perceived it, but in that case, they listened to us. There have been some other cases where they have made those changes, and they really didn't, not necessarily listen, but in some of the cases, they didn't even have oral argument for the case. So the good news that came out of the oral program is that they listened to us. They listened and they made changes to the rule, but they weren't nearly as drastic as they were to start with. I think you're aware of some of those other changes. They changed the expert evidence rule. They changed the summary judgment rule. They now have before them what I call the pandemic continuance rule, where they're going to make a lot of the things that were happening during the pandemic are going to happen on a long-term basis. And a lot of those, like virtual hearings, are probably extremely good and will streamline the court system and make it a lot better. They have the proposal to speed up court cases. That proposal is very lengthy. The committee that worked on it took approximately 2 years to do it, and they made extensive recommendations about how to speed up that process. Right now, they're in the process of giving the Judicial Management Council their report. They've gotten in reports from many members and aspects of the bar about that, and then that's going to go from the Judicial Management Council up to the court. And the reason I raise these things is, going forward, because the court is now being so proactive, I think it's really important that legal aid associations, volunteer pro bono attorneys also become really proactive in the rulemaking process itself. It's not a matter anymore of just having attorneys who work for legal aid provide that legal aid, having volunteer pro bono attorneys. It's now also becoming involved in the system that actually changes how the system works, how you're going to interact with pro bono attorneys, how that opportunity is going to be available to you. So it's going to get harder in the sense that it's just not enough to provide the pro bono services everybody's been doing, and you're doing a great job with it. It's now a matter of looking also at how the system is being changed, and either work with the court to make those changes, or if they make ones you think will be negative and work against the pro bono system, to really oppose those, give the court alternative suggestions so that we can move forward and continue to serve the poor. As I said, the best part about the IOTA case was it gave us a chance to see what they were thinking. It gave us a chance to get input into the system. They took that input, they listened to us, and they made significant changes over the rule that was proposed. So as we go forward, I think that's the thing we have to keep in mind, is the court was willing to listen in this particular area of the law for sure about how we provide services to the poor. We can do that individually. We don't have to wait on task force being proposed by the Supreme Court, or even the Supreme Court taking it up on a proactive basis themselves. Attorneys can make that sort of change, and those interested in serving the self-represented, the pro bono community in this town and all across the state can make that. Bar Rule 1-12.1F allows 50 members of the Florida Bar in good standing to propose to the court a rule change. So what I spoke with the legal aid associations when we were representing them in the pro bono IOTA litigation, what we said was, what you really should do is document as carefully as you can how that rule as adopted is affecting you. How is it impairing you from providing legal services to the poor? And once you document that, if you think there's a rule change that needs to be made, and you think it's a reasonable change that the court should accept, then you can directly petition the Florida Supreme Court to make that change. I think that's where we're going to need to go in the future, is to be more proactive ourselves for those of us trying to assist the poor who need legal advice. We need to be more, just like the court is now being, we need to be more proactive. We need to not just react, we need to propose the solutions to the court. It won't be easy, but nothing you do now in representing the poor is easy. So you have experience in dealing with difficult problems and difficult questions. So I would ask you this: stay committed, stay involved, most of all, keep up the great work, and thanks again for the opportunity to speak with you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Gowdy and Mr. Hall. What a wonderful presentation. I appreciate you being our keynote speakers this year and helping us understand the status of the IOTA Trust Account Program and how it has evolved. Let's be frank, ladies and gentlemen, we have not reached our goal of justice for all. People still need your help. Our former Florida Bar President John Stewart said, quote, "Justice for some is neither justice for all nor justice at all." Let that sink in. Justice for some is neither justice for all nor justice at all. Pro bono attorneys, we need you to keep up the amazing work and to encourage colleagues to get involved too. Thank you again for all you do. This concludes this program.